Well, Johnny, this week's show started off with a little bit of chaos. You and me have just spent about 5 minutes trying to work out our lighting. I hope it's all coming across well on the camera because, yeah, it took us about 10 minutes to get this all sorted out. So while we get started, guys, I'd like to welcome everyone to another great week of NRL Offside, or hopefully what will be a great week of NRL Offside. But, Johnny, mate, I'm not going to lie here. Mate, I have been dreading this moment since the final siren went off in Thursday night's game between your Chooks and the Panthers, mate. Mate, I have a hard enough time hosing down your Roosters nonsense at the best of times. But now they've gone to the top of the premiership ladder. What do we got? 3 rounds left? Mate, so they're looking in a very, very strong position as we head to the business end of the season. Mate, I'll probably need one of those bush firefighting helicopters. Mate, you know those ones that carry the big cisterns of water underneath them? And mate, even then, I reckon I'd be struggling to put out all of your Roosters fire at the moment. Mate, there are some small mercies here. Mate, thank heavens that the Panthers Chooks game is my game in speed round this week. Mate, you would have talked for about 13 minutes. You probably would have made it sound like the greatest victory since the Battle of Marathon. So, mate, that's a bit of a small mercy there. But I think it's time for me to rip the Band-Aid off here, mate. I'm almost afraid to ask this, but how are you, mate? How's your week been?
Look, as always, g'day, Noz, and hello, listeners. Look, I'm feeling pretty good this week, Noz. Actually, I'm on top of the world. Pretty pumped to see my boys sitting top of the ladder. I actually think it's the first time in 5 years that Chooks have been coming first, so pretty ecstatic about that. And look, I'm just happy that we finally got a win over Penrith. I thought it was easily the best game of the season, so I'm really looking forward to your review later in the show. But look, for now, as always, mate, over to you, Captain Noz. Take us up for the first big hit up, buddy.
Mate, I can sense your excitement, and I understand you maybe throwing out a little bit of hyperbole, but the best game of the year, mate, was definitely the Eels-Cowboys game. Mate, that was a contender for the best game of the decade, but we are going to get to that very, very shortly. Now, in terms of today's show, guys, we've got the usuals, speed rounds, like an amazing slate of football over the weekend. What caught our eye? Again, there was plenty going on the field to make us sit up in our seat. The round preview, tipping was a bit up and down last week. Some things we got spot on, other things we got completely wrong. So we're going to have another dash at that this week. We've got Vox popping, the grapple. Now, I am pretty excited about the grapple this week. I always get excited about the grapple, Johnny, but, mate, we've got a fantastic segment this week. It's been one of the hallmarks of NRL Offside that we get ideas from our listeners. So we've had great ideas from, it was Vessi last week. We've had ideas from Croaky, Asher. Mate, this is one of our best, and it comes from my old man. So we're going to be talking about things in the game that annoy us. And freeballing is back to you this week, mate. I've seen the notes. I'm actually going to call it early. I think it's going to be our wit and wisdom of JC. So, mate, we'll see how we go with that. But, Johnny, mate, let's get the engines fired up.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Okay, Panthers versus Roosters. Well, finally, the NRL program has got this one right by scheduling a top-of-the-table clash to start the round. And as you said, Johnny, it certainly lived up to the hype. Perhaps stung by a week where their heavyweight credentials were questioned, the Panthers started this game with great intent. They were really putting it on the Roosters with heavy defence and great line speed. But the real story of the night was the Chooks' resilience. After repelling wave after wave of Panthers attack, the Tricolours crossed for the first try after 20 minutes, with Daly Cherry Evans winding back the clock. Following this, the game settled into an absorbing and physical contest. While they looked a bit clunky and one-dimensional without Isaiah Yeo, the Panthers continually asked questions, which by and large the Roosters were able to answer, at least until the 66th minute, when Moses Leota crossed to bring Penrith within 2 points. That made the last 14 minutes absolutely absorbing, but it was that man again, the 37-year-old DCE, who crossed for a late try that sealed the deal. The Panthers had a final furious burst, but it just proved to be their death throes. The Chooks took a well-deserved 2 points and ascended to the top of the competition ladder with this win. As loath as I am to say it, they are looking ominous as we head into September. Sea Eagles versus Dolphins. Now, Johnny, I've spent a bit of time thinking about this over the last week or so. Mate, I actually think the Manly team caught bird flu at the end of June, and unbeknown to us fans, they dropped dead about 3 weeks ago. And the Redcliffe Dolphins, well, mate, they played like someone tiptoeing around a disease-ridden carcass. Holding their nose, they scored in the 29th, 57th, 61st, and 73rd minutes. They kicked 2 conversions and 1 penalty goal. The Seagulls scored nothing. That's probably all we need to say about this game. Bulldogs versus Rabbitohs. Now, I mentioned our tipping at the top of the program, Johnny. In season 2026, we have set a pretty hot pace with tipping clangers, but this one ranks as one of our biggest stinkers of the season, or one of my biggest stinkers of the season. In the round preview, you might recall me saying that the Dogs were going to murder the Rabbitohs. In fact, I think I might have even used those words. Well, they didn't, Johnny. In fact, it was the exact opposite. The red and green pretty much dominated the entire game, so much so that they didn't have to bother with trivialities like kicking conversions. The highlight for South was the performance of their spine. Matt Duffy was dangerous all night. Jaden Sullivan did what he needed to do, and Brandon Smith continued his upward trajectory. But South's most impressive performer was Cody Walker. Now, we do criticise Cody a bit on this show, Johnny, but he was the undoubted leader of the team for this game, not overplaying his hand and controlling his team's tempo. Also, a big rap for David Fafita, who had his best game in a Souths jersey. As for our Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, now I've been talking about this for a few weeks on the show, Johnny. I am trying to infiltrate the WhatsApp group that our Bulldogs mates have. Well, I wrote this after the game on Friday night. Don't worry about the invite to the Dogs thread, boys. I'm good. Sharks versus Raiders. Now, you know the toupee I suggested that Todd Payton should wear in the coach's box a few weeks ago? Well, let's order another one for Craig Fitzgibbon. Mate, after running the month of July as the hottest team in the NRL, this Sharks team is very much making their coach pull out his hair, backing up their upset loss to the Dragons with this should-have, could-have, would-have performance against the Raiders. I suppose there was a bit of an excuse. They did lose Braden Trindle, their best attacking player, in the first 10 minutes, but they just failed to deliver when they needed to. After a back-and-forth first half, which quite frankly was very entertaining, the Raiders went into the halftime break with a 4-point lead at 18-14. In the second half, the Sharks took an early lead, but alas, they failed to show their defensive resilience to prevent the Green Machine from retaking the lead with 24 minutes to go. From that point, Johnny, we saw the Cronulla boys in all of their choking glory. They must have bombed at least 3 tries. At this point, I'd just like to send a memo to Britton Nakorda. When you have a 2-man overlap with 7 minutes to go and you're behind by 4, pass the ball, Britton. These Cronulla boys showed no composure whatsoever, and the loss sees them drop out of the all-important top 4. And you know what? With their performances over the last fortnight, they really don't deserve to be there.
All right, let's go to your Eels versus the Cowboys. You touched on it earlier, Noz. What an absolutely entertaining game of footy. Mate, this was an absolute beauty. This was your classic, you score a try, we'll score a try type of game. End-to-end footy, and some of the tries were absolutely unbelievable. I think a couple of them were probably genuine tries of the season stuff. The Junior Paulo 30-metre cutout pass to send Sam Rami over in the corner was an absolute peach. Mate, who can believe a front rower throwing a pass like that? That's quite ridiculous. And then the Cowboys answered that with an incredible Tom Chester try in the corner. So many sets of hands, many kicks, keeping the ball alive. And then that final bloody audacious flick pass to finish it off. Mate, for me, that was the try of this season, no doubt about it. I thought Mitchell Moses was excellent again. And obviously the Eels eventually snuck home right at the death with a pretty fortunate penalty to win the game by 2. But look, that was a brilliant game of rugby league. And, mate, to be fair, it probably deserved to go to Golden Point. All right, let's move to the Broncos versus the Warriors. Look, I'll start with, mate, the poor Broncos. When your confidence is down and your luck is out, mate, everything seems to go against you. And that pretty much sums up where Brisbane are right now. I actually didn't think they were that bad in the first half. They had some unlucky moments and actually created a few opportunities, but somehow they still went into halftime about 20 points down. And that's what happens when you're a team completely down in confidence. The Warriors, on the other hand, look, Mate, this is a quality football team. They've got a big, mobile, powerful forward pack, and their outside backs are just as strong. Mate, and DWZ was at it again, scoring one of those trademark corner put downs. And these guys have got plenty of speed and strike across the park. So, yeah, impressive win by the Warriors. Probably the only issue there was, the halfback Metcalf obviously went down with that hamstring injury when he was taking that kick for goal. So, yeah, that doesn't look too good. But look, the Warriors, these guys are a serious premiership threat. Let's move to the Knights versus the Titans. Look, mate, I want to start by saying, mate, well done to the Knights. They've officially booked their place in the finals. What an incredible turnaround after collecting the wooden spoon last year. The Knights came out firing, racing to a 16-point lead with veteran Dane Gagai bagging a double quite quickly. And then the Titans fought their way back with a couple of pretty soft tries before the Knights clicked into gear again, and it was obviously highlighted by a brilliant solo try from Fletcher Sharp. Mate, as I said many a time, this kid's an absolute gun, and mate, I reckon not even a bolter. I reckon he's definitely got to be in that Kangaroos World Cup squad at the end of the season. Look, the only concern for Coach Holbrook in this match was probably the points that they conceded. Newcastle did let in 26 points. And obviously, if they want to make some noise and make a fist of it in September, they definitely need to tighten their defence up pretty quickly. But look, great achievement, Knights. From wooden spooners last year to finalists 12 months later, that's a massive job by the Knights. All right, let's go to the Titans versus the Dragons. Let me start by saying go the Dragons. That's 2 wins on the trot. I'm not sure the last time I've said that, but yeah, obviously it's been a little while. As for the poor Tigers, look, their losing streak continues. They did try and make a bit of a comeback sort of late in the game, but look, let's be honest, the damage was done by then. And I reckon, the end of the season can't come quick enough for the Tigers, boys. And just on the Dragons, just want to make a point. I'm just really surprised they're letting Tyrell Sloan go. Yeah. I reckon this kid has plenty of offers still in the NRL. And I thought on the weekend he really showed some nice touches again in this win. So, yeah, I still think there's a quality first grader there. I'm just surprised that the Dragons are letting him go.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. I mean, in terms of that, we almost saw it before and after on the weekend. Tyrell Sloan reminds me of Matt Duffy. Caught in a bad team. They can't quite find a place for him. Mate, he's probably going to go to Super League and kill it over in Super League and come back and be a little bit more mature and really show what he can do in the NRL. It's a real shame he hasn't actually been able to solidify a spot in that Dragons team because I'm with you. I think he's a phenomenal footballer. But Johnny, I mean, you summed it up within speed round. There was so much going on across the park. But what caught your eye, mate? What made you sit up and pay attention?
All right, mate. You know I can't help myself, and I have to bring up something from the Roosters versus Penrith game. But look, what caught my eye, and I've highlighted this guy now probably 2 or 3 times since he made his comeback after, I think, 333 days without playing a game of footy. And it was Cody Ramsey's performance last Thursday night against the Panthers. So we all know that Teddy pulled out of the match and couldn't play, and obviously Cody played at number 1 at fullback. Mate, let me tell you, this guy, he wasn't the best player in the field. He's probably the second or third best player in the field. But what an unbelievable performance by this guy. Just sort of, every time this guy touches a ball, it just feels like, mate, something's going to happen. He's got this sort of electric turn of speed. Sometimes he sort of runs like there's sort of funnel web spiders on him. People just sort of seem to sort of not be able to put him down. And I just thought he was brilliant again. His running game. He's catching the ball under high pressure. Mate, he performed really well. And look, obviously he was up against Dylan Edwards, who also played well. But, mate, Cody Ramsey had an exceptional game. I really hope the Roosters find a way to keep him in the squad. Look, obviously when Teddy's there, he's not going to play fullback, but I definitely think he deserves to be in the 17 or the top 19 somewhere. He's playing unbelievable football. I'm just so proud of the guy. And I just love every time he gets interviewed after each time he plays, just that, that humble way he presents himself, and you sort of, it looks like he's going to sort of, tear up every time because he's just so proud of where he's been and obviously where he's at. So well done, Cody Ramsey, mate. I'm rooting for you, and I hope you stay with the Roosters for years to come because you're a great guy and you're a great footballer.
But there's a second point where I agree with you, but I'm a little bit worried. Like, if you keep talking him up, then that's just going to push his price up higher and higher. And mate, will the Roosters be able to fit him under the cap? I mean, the Roosters have had a history of not being able to fit players under the cap. So, but if Cody Ramsey prices himself out of that, it could be a disaster for the Roosters.
No.
We should start a campaign. We should start a campaign to get some salary cap relief for the Roosters. NRL Offsides campaign to look after the impoverished teams in the NRL. Now, I've got a couple, Johnny. Now, this one's for you, mate. Celeste Fekete. How about Celeste Fekete on Thursday night? Mate, he was channeling Bunny Riley. He folded Liam Martin twice. I've never seen Liam Martin get hit and go backwards 2 metres, but that tackle that Fekete did on him in the second half made it literally knocked Martin sideways. He was phenomenal. There are a few other things, Johnny. Matt Duffy, I mentioned him in Speed Round, but he's proving to be the most underpaid player in the NRL. I think he's only on a New South Wales Cup contract, so I don't think they can pay more than $20,000. So he's a bloke who is probably getting the same amount of money our kids are getting to pull beers down at the local pub. And he was one of the top 2 or 3 players, not only in the Souths game, but I think over the entire weekend. And the Sharks, mate, have the Sharks started their annual choke 4 weeks early? It certainly looks that way. And that's why I think we need to rush that toupee to Fitzgibbon next week to the coach's box. But mate, that is mid-prelude. What caught my eye was the Eels-Cowboys game on Saturday night, mate. I've already mentioned the fact that it was a candidate for game of the season. Mate, it was certainly the most bizarre game, probably of the decade. Mate, at times it was like it was on fast forward. At other times it was like a circus. There were tightropes, clowns, juggling. And, mate, after watching it for a while, you felt like you'd sort of dropped a tab of acid. I mean, I didn't know what was going on in the entire portions of that game. From the opening kickoff, mate, they kicked to Brian Kelly, the winger, and somehow he breaks through the entire Cowboy frontline defence and almost runs the length of the field and scores a try. Then about 3 minutes after that, I don't know if you saw this, Johnny, but this is arguably the oddest play of the year. The Cowboys had 3 kicks on their final tackle. They actually kicked it twice into Parramatta players who weren't even trying to charge the kick down and then had to kick it 3 times. But, mate, my favourite bizarre moment of the entire game was Jason Taumalolo's hit on Mitch Moses. Mate, it was absolutely fantastic. Even though I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Parramatta fan, mate, I rose up out of my seat for that one. It sort of looked like Moses' spirit temporarily left his body. But I don't know, again, we often talk about The Simpsons, but there's that episode of The Simpsons where Bart's knocked off his skateboard by Monty Burns in his Rolls Royce. Mate, it was almost like that. You could see Mitch's spirit temporarily leaving his body and then coming back in. It was so bad that Jason Taumalolo, the gentleman that he is, actually did a quick welfare check just to make sure that Mitch was okay. But you mentioned it, Johnny, all of that paled into insignificance compared with the 5-minute stretch from the 57th to the 62nd minute. Mate, in the 57th minute, you actually had the order mixed up in Speed Round, but in the 57th minute, mate, the Cowboys scored a try that went from the eastern touchline back to the western touchline. It passed through 8 sets of hands. There were 2 kicks, and it was finished on one of the most astounding flick passes you'll ever see when Braden Burns sprung Tom Chester to go score in the corner. Now, Parramatta actually saw that and thought, hey, you think that's good? We'll raise you on that. 5 minutes later, Mitch Moses put up a kick. Now, Will Penasini, in his typical comedy capers kick-chasing way, he ran through, fumbled the ball, somehow inadvertently kicked it backwards. It ended up in Junior Barlow's hands. Mate, Junior then threw the most incredible pinpoint 30-metre spiral pass, hit Sean Russell perfectly on the chest, and then Russell set up Jordan Samrani in the corner. Mate, these were 2 back-to-back tries that were amongst the best tries of the season. It was absolutely remarkable. I had a ball watching that game. Again, there was nothing to it. I'm really hoping that the more the competition goes on, these Cowboys don't make the semi-finals because they're just hopeless in defence. But, mate, it was a phenomenal game, and it was probably the most enjoyment that I've had for the entire rugby league season. But speaking of enjoyment, Johnny, we're going to go in the opposite direction here. We're going to the grapple. Now, last week's segment, Johnny, was in the spirit of deep thinking. Now, we got a bit of mixed feedback from this. So we had some people who liked that sort of two players in concept. Other people, looking at you, Pablo Norbury, didn't like the concept at all. But, mate, there's going to be no deep thinking today. Mate, today is all about knee-jerk reaction. So I mentioned this in the introduction. We're going to be channeling our inner grumpy old men. And, mate, we're going to be discussing those things in the game that annoy us. Now, I mentioned this as well. The inspiration for this was my old man. So he is like most grumpy old men. That increasingly includes you and I, Johnny. Mate, we just watch things looking for things to be annoyed at, including games of football. But Johnny, mate, lead us out. I know you've got a few in this category.
All right. Look, yeah, great topic suggestion, Noz, and shout out to your dad, Tony Mitchell, for the inspiration. Now, look, I know you asked for three, but once I started thinking about this, I couldn't stop. So here are a few things in rugby league that really get under my skin. The first one, I actually agree with you, and I pinched it from your notes. The voluntary tackle. I cannot stand this in the game. Absolutely hate this. Number two, and this is one of my pet hates, and I really, really hate this, it's when wingers who continually rush in defence never trust the inside man, or man, I should say, and this happens, mate, consistently in most teams. My third one is the whole thing about not stopping the clock. So, for example, when you kick for goal, when a try is scored, this whole thing about just stopping the clock in the last 5 minutes absolutely annoys the crap out of me. Just have the same rules for the entire 80 minutes. I reckon if you add up all the stoppages of play for goal kicks and when a try is scored, you're probably talking about 10, 12 minutes of extra play that could be played in a match. The other one that I'm finding a little bit frustrated, it's a fairly new rule, and it's this whole one-handed bat back when jumping or contesting for a high ball. These days, it's a penalty. We saw it last week with Marky Mark when that try was disallowed. I think it's a stupid rule. I really find that one absolutely terrible. Look, I've spoken about this a lot, and obviously I hate soft sim bins. And look, I think it's improved a bit this season, but it's fair to say we've had a lot of soft sim bins in the last couple of years. And then probably the one that really frustrates me is this whole inside pass thing. You know, when teams are marching ahead and out of the, a set of six, 3 or 4 tackles are just inside passes. I just find that so boring to watch, pardon my French. And I just find most times it doesn't get the team anywhere. And this is the last one. I'm not a fan of golden point. I just think it should be 5 minutes each way. Whoever scores the most points at the end is declared the winner. Mate, if it's a draw, mate, it's a draw. So, mate, I know you asked for 3. I've probably given you 10. And you can see, a lot of things annoy me in the game a lot of times.
I love it. We've unlocked the inner curmudgeon. Johnny's inner curmudgeon, so much so you're even using cuss words. Now, but I've been a little bit more disciplined, but I didn't mention this. I'm going to have to piggyback off your one about the inside pass. And the worst thing about the inside pass is when the halfback just drifts aimlessly across the field and then waves the bloke back in. And then they give it to the bloke who then runs straight at the teeth of the defence. I've never been able to work it out. It is one of the worst plays in football. It wasn't on my list though, Johnny. The voluntary tackle was on my list. So you mentioned that you pinched it from me. That's all right. I'll give it to you. How much I love you. But the one thing about the voluntary tackle that drives me absolutely batty is the fact that is it still in the rule book? Like if we actually ring out the big boss, if we ring out Peter Valandis right now and said, Pete, mate, pull out the current statute book and see if the voluntary tackle rule is still in there, mate, would he be able to find it? Because they never enforce it. And the biggest problem that I have with it, Johnny, is that it often negates a good bit of footy from the attacking team. How many times have we seen a well-placed kick and the bloke just jumps on the ground? I've always thought it was a ridiculous situation in any sport when you can gain an advantage from breaking the rules, but that's essentially what you are doing here. So you're not only negating a good bit of footy from the opposition, you're breaking the rules to do so. Now, mate, my second one, and Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here, mate. I think you're going to agree with this as well, particularly when we talk about where it's sprung from. But that is dummy halves who continually wave their arms up in the air in exasperation at the play the ball. Now, this was invented by a man who is one of my least favourite footballers of all time, Jeff Tooby. Mate, he was the pioneer of this. He would be constantly whining and yapping at the referee. But, mate, this season we have a couple of contenders as well. Freddie Lussick at Penrith. But he has been terrible with this. Every time he's in dummy half, he's gesticulating and yapping at the referee. And Mitch Moses, as loath as I am to say it, Mitch has not been very good this season either. He's constantly chirping at the referee. And the worst thing is that I am sure that it has the opposite effect. If I was a referee, I would deliberately not give a penalty if the dummy half was always yelling and gesticulating at me. I'd let him hold him down for 3 minutes. If you're going to wave your arms around in the air, then good luck, champ. But, mate, the final thing, and this is in a similar theme to what you talked about with the wingers constantly coming in, but that's matching up in defence. Now, this was particularly egregious, Johnny, in the early part of the season. It seems to have gotten a little bit better as the season's progressed. But how many times have we seen the attacking side just have more numbers on one side? They pass the ball along the back line like it's a training drill, and the winger strolls over for a try untouched. And, mate, the worst part of it, the part that just, again, really sort of gets my craw, is that most of it seems to be at a scrum when it's the easiest, occasion to match up in defence. It's understandable if it's in the hurly-burly of a set, particularly on a later tackle when the defence is broken down. But on a set piece, mate, it just, what the defenders can't count past 4. I just can't work it out. It literally just brings out my inner curmudgeon. It drives me crazy. Oh, Johnny, we could wallow in this all day. It's probably the longest grapple section that we've had all year. But we better move on, mate. Let's get stuck into the round preview. So lead us out, mate.
All right, let's start with the Storm versus the Panthers. Look, I'll keep this one short and sweet. I think the Panthers will get the 2 points. I'll get the win down in Melbourne. Clearly, they got a lot more to play for than the Storm, who are obviously now out of the finals race. Look, the only interesting thing for me will just see how Penrith sort of bounce back after last week's pretty tough game and cracking game versus the Roosters. But as I said, I think the Panthers will win. They'll need to start sort of getting a little bit of momentum going into the finals, and I think Nathan will have a pretty good game against the Storm, and I think they'll win fairly comfortably.
Mate, I got a question for you to start this prediction off. Mate, since round 14, when Penrith murdered the Tigers 68-0, how many games have they won and how many games have they lost? So they've played 8 games over that period of time. So what's been their record since then?
Look, I know they've dropped. I'm going to say 4-4.
No, 3-5. Mate, that includes the stink factor. They were beaten by the Titans, the Cowboys, and the Broncos. Mate, they have not been very good over the last couple of months. And the interesting thing is, even though I talked about it in speed round, mate, there's been a bit of revisionist history since last Thursday and the loss against the Chooks. Mate, for large swathes of that game, despite the fact that the Chooks defence was great, the Panthers look like a team that's currently playing 400 footy. Mate, they just did not have any attack at all. And mate, as I said, I just haven't seen any light. I think they're actually getting worse week to week. But, mate, in terms of this, I think the key to this game is defence. The one thing about the Panthers is they have been defending well, and I think that's where this game is going to be won and lost. Melbourne have a bit of attack in them, but they don't really have much discipline. And I think that the Panthers' hard-nosed defence is going to be a little bit too much for them.
Okay, let's go to the Raiders versus the Broncos. Look, I'll start by saying good win by the Raiders last week. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, look, the Broncos weren't that bad against the Warriors, especially in the first half. They had some chances, but look, nothing is really going their way at the moment. Clearly, the Raiders are probably playing better football at the moment and playing at home. I just think they've got a little bit more to play for. I read somewhere they've still got some sort of mathematical chance of making the 8. So I think the Raiders will get the job done, and it probably pushes the Broncos one step closer to that wooden spoon, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the episode.
I've got another question for you, Johnny. You don't need to answer this one, but mate, what Broncos weren't that bad against the Warriors? Mate, did I miss a game? Did the Denver Broncos play the Golden State Warriors in like some sort of cross gridiron basketball matchup that I was unaware of? Mate, if your definition of bad luck encompasses not tackling anyone or having any degree of attacking competence, yeah, maybe the Broncos did have a little bit of bad luck, but mate, in that game against the Warriors on Saturday night, I just saw one of the worst teams in the competition. The Raiders, on the other hand, mate, they were actually pretty good. They hung tough. They gritted out that win against Cronulla. Mate, the last 25 minutes, Cronulla actually threw a bit at them, and Canberra's desperate scrambling defence was pretty impressive. Brisbane are going into this game without Reece Walsh. Mate, you can say what you like about Reece Walsh, but he's been the only one of the Broncos really putting in this season. He's tried really, really hard, and he's again made attempts to get them up and get them going. Mate, I really think that the Raiders are going to put a score on them.
All right, let's go to the Dolphins versus the Eels. Yeah, great tip, Nos, with your Eels last week, as we mentioned, mate. That was a cracking game against the Cowboys. Definitely, yeah, probably the top one or two games of the year. The Finns, on the other hand, look, they weren't at their absolute best against Manly, but they still got the job done quite convincingly, which is still a pretty good sign for them. They're playing back up in Queensland, so I just think the Finns will just have too much firepower for your Eels. I think your guys will make a little bit of a contest of it, but I just think that the Dolphins will be too strong and they'll get the 2 points and head closer to the finals.
Yeah, mate, I think the Eels can actually trouble the Finns in this one. Mate, my Parramatta team might be slapdash, but they might do things that make their fans want a stiff drink, but they play. Mate, they play. In the comparable 8-week period to the Panthers, so I talked about the fact that the Panthers have gone 3-5 over that period of time. The Eels have gone 4-4, and they haven't really had any stirring victories. It's not as though they've had upsets over teams that are better than them. They've actually beat teams they should be beating. With that in mind, though, I mean, the Finns are better than Parramatta. They have been a little bit out of sort. They are on a month-long run where they haven't really tackled, and that includes their home abomination against the Sharks. But this Redcliffe team is a very, very high-scoring team. I think Parramatta's going to struggle to keep pace with them. There is the remotest chance of an upset, Johnny, but unlike last week, I don't quite have the cojones to go for the Eels.
Okay, let's go to the Knights versus the Seagulls. It's old boys game up in Newcastle, and look, I think this is going to be another easy victory for the Knights. I really don't have too much to say about the Eagles, to be honest. I sort of put them up there with the Tigers at the moment. They've been absolutely awful, especially the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks. Whereas the Knights, as I mentioned earlier, mate, these guys are finals bound. I think they'll finish off the season up at Newcastle in it with a pretty big high, and they'll have a pretty massive win, I think, over the Eagles. So go the Knights, and can't wait to see these guys play finals this season.
Mate, in speed round, I mentioned the fact that the Manly team have been dead for about the last 3 or 4 weeks. Mate, their attack has just completely disappeared, and that's not particularly promising when you're playing a high-octane team like the Knights. I sort of agree with you. It might be a little bit closer than expected. Newcastle do have a bit of a tendency to play down to their opposition, and we've talked a number of times this season about the fact that they can lose focus. But I can't see them losing. I don't think Manly have anything at the moment.
All right, let's go to the Dragons versus the Bulldogs. Mate, I'm looking forward to this one. I think, the Dragons have been on a bit of a mission the past few weeks, probably the past few months, to be honest. They're playing some good footy, picking up a few wins now, which is good. And, they're clearly not getting blown off the park like they were earlier in the season. Mate, the Dogs, on the other hand, how can I describe this, mate? They were absolutely awful against South last start. But look, they're quite lucky because obviously the Cowboys losing last week, mate, somehow their finals hopes are still alive. So they're still in the race for the 8. So for them, it's pretty simple. They have to win. I think the Dragons will make this one tough, and look, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they got the win. But I'll go for the Dogs, Justin. I think this will be, as I said, be a pretty good game.
Mate, this is a game that the Dogs do not want to play at the moment. So it's a stealth rivalry game. Canterbury and the Dragons have traditionally hated each other. We're going back to our mate Johnny Croak. I think of all the teams in the NRL, the Dragons is the team that he dislikes the most, being a Canterbury fan. So, mate, they're going into a rivalry game, and also mate, the Dragons are in a similar situation to Parramatta at the end of last year. Mate, their confidence is up. They've got nothing to lose. They're sort of looking forward to next season when they've got bigger and brighter things on the horizon. And, mate, for that reason, I'm going for the Dragons. The Bulldogs were miserable against Souths. They did nothing. And the Dragons, yeah, they lack talent, but they are playing with a lot of spirit at the moment. So, mate, that's my upset tip for the week. I am going for St. George in this one.
That'll be 3 on the trot for the Dragons. Okay, let's go to the Titans versus the Sharks. Look, I could almost start with this one with who cares? But look, the Sharks are still in the 8, although, mate, they look like they've got a serious case of the yips at the moment. Mate, there's probably a little bit of a season-ending collapse after a pretty ordinary few weeks, and now with Trindle injured, is there a count on how long the guy's out for?
May dislocated his shoulder, so I'd be very surprised if they actually get him back by the end of the season. And even then, as we've seen with those dislocated shoulders, they're ticking time bombs.
Okay. I didn't realise it was that serious. If he's not back, that really puts the Sharks' sort of finals hopes in huge danger. Look, the Titans, as I've said many times in the last few episodes, they've been absolutely disappointing this season. I really expected a lot more from them. So look, I'll tip the Sharks, not with much confidence. They'll probably just get over the line.
Now, Johnny, you know, after 40 plus years that I spend a lot of time thinking about nonsense. I was thinking, can you actually be headless and choking at the same time? Because, mate, this Sharks team ran around like a bunch of headless chooks for the last half an hour of that game on Saturday, and they also are choking as well. So maybe they've just got a coin dislodged in their neck while their head's on the ground somewhere. Mate, with Trindle out, I actually think this team's going to struggle. And I don't know, mate, the Titans, how would you describe them? They can sometimes get up. I mean, they're not a very good team either, but they do have a bit of attack in them. I'm actually going to go for my second straight upset with this one, Johnny. I'm going to go for the Titans.
All right, let's go to my Roosters versus the Tigers. Look, as I've said to a few people in the last few days, mate, that was the Roosters' best performance in a few years. And look, defensively, it was probably the best I've seen them since probably those premiership glory days of 2018 and 2019. But look, let's not forget, I was there that day. The Chooks dropped this exact game against the Tigers last year. So hopefully there's no complacency, especially now that we're sitting on top of the ladder. And I'm sure I heard somewhere this morning that we're premiership favourites on the market. Teddy's going to return, which I think makes our side even stronger than the one that beat Penrith. So look, on paper, the Chooks should really put a score on the hapless Tigers. If my boys bring last week's intensity and that defensive attitude, I really think we're going to be in for a feast against the Tigers. And I'll call it now because he's probably been a bit lean the last few weeks. He's missed a few in the air, and I think Marky Mark will bag a hat trick. And as I said, I hope he catches a few more balls in the last few weeks. So go the Roosters plus 40.
Now, this game would have trap game written all over it. Last week, the Roosters played a very physically demanding top-of-the-table clash. But, mate, this is the Tigers. I mean, come on. Mate, they're going to win this in a cakewalk. The Tigers haven't so much clocked off. Mate, they've taken their boots off. They've walked down Glover Street and they've thrown them into the Parramatta River. Mate, on a more interesting note when it comes to the Tigers, mate, I don't know if this is actually the case, but if end-of-season trips are determined by their performance, mate, the Tigers have gone from Tahiti to Bali to the Gold Coast. And, mate, if this keeps up, they're going to end up in a caravan park just outside of Foster Tuncurry. Mate, they have just been awful for the last month or so. I think that the Chooks might actually start to get up into Cowboys territory with the score in this one.
Oh, mate, I love Foster. Young memories as a kid. All right, let's move to the game of the round. Or what is it? Round of the game.
Round of the game.
Okay, let's. It's the Rabbitohs versus the Warriors. Look, I think this one's going to be a pretty good contest, to be honest. I know you keep calling the Rabbitohs the pretenders, but look, I tell you what, mate, these guys just keep finding ways to win. It hasn't, yeah, it's not always pretty, but look, against the Dogs, mate, I thought they played really well
Yeah, me
for
too.
most of that game. Mate, Cody Walker, mate, absolutely killed them, and I actually think the guy's been killing it for a little while now. We know about the South's left edge. Look, it's probably the best in the comp, and it's probably been the best in the comp for a number of years. Alex Johnson. Oh my God, mate! This guy still keeps scoring tries. I think by the time he retires, he's gonna bag over 300. I think he scored another hat trick or another double last week. And look, the Warriors, as we said, they were very impressive against the Broncos. So look, this is going to be a cracking game. I give the Rabbitohs a chance because I think they're playing quite well at the moment. But I'll stick with the Warriors. I just think, yeah, they'll just probably be a bit too physical and maybe just got a little bit too much class. So I'll go the Warriors.
Mate, the biggest wild card for this game is trying to gauge which of these teams' last game opponents were the worst and how that actually factors in as well. I mean, Souths were controlled and disciplined against a Dogs team that had no direction whatsoever. The Warriors rolled over a Brisbane Broncos team that just can't get out of its own way. Now, there's a couple of factors with this game, Johnny. Mate, I think Souths can win if they somehow manage to get the big Warriors forwards on the back foot. Now, with teams like the Warriors that are very momentum based, if you sort of knock them out of their rhythm a little bit, it can sort of really give you the upper hand. But I don't think South have that capability. In fact, I think last week might have been a bit of an exception. I'm predicting that the red and the green are going to come thudding back to earth. But it's a bit of a challenge to Cody Walker. Come on, Cody, prove me wrong on that. Okay,
Hey,
now I mentioned this. Sorry, what you say, mate?
I was just going to say I heard a good stat by what's his name, Campbell Graham, this afternoon. The Rabbitohs are undefeated at a core this season,
Okay, that's
and
interesting.
this game's going to be played at a course. So there's one little stat that might prove us all wrong.
Yeah, mate, every winning streak needs to come to an end. So I'm gonna be predicting that South's Acor winning streak is going to come to a shuddering halt on Sunday. Now, mate, free balling. It's back to you this week, mate. I've seen the notes. It is well and truly beyond a free balling. We've actually gone back to the wit and wisdom of JC. So take it away, mate.
Okay, Noz, and listeners, look, my free balling topic this week, and I love digging into the archives, so I've dug pretty deep for this one. Look, I'll pose this: has a team ever won the premiership one year and then followed up the following season by collecting the wooden spoon? Any thoughts?
Mate, I was listening to the radio the other day, and this was, I think it was the 8 a.m. News on whatever station we were listening to. I think it was like 2GB or 2SM or something. And the woman said that there's a chance that the Broncos are going to win the wooden spoon, and that'd be the first time that it has happened since 1963. Now, Johnny, the only thing I am certain of is that that stat was completely wrong because that was in the midst of St George's 11 straight premiership. So I don't know what year it last happened, but it wasn't 1963. Tell me what year was it?
Now, technically, the last time it happened was actually Melbourne in 2009, 2010. Now, you remember they won the famous 2000 grand final against your boys, Noz, but
I
obviously that
remember.
premiership was stripped because of the salary cap scandal. And then in 2010, they had all their competition points taken away. So I'm going to put a bit of an asterisk next to that one because it wasn't really true or real. The last time it actually happened fair income on the footy field was way back in 1952-53 with Western Suburbs, premiers in 52, and they came dead last in 53. It also happened to the Bulldogs in 1942-43. So we're talking more than 70 years since a reigning premier generally went from first to worst the following season. But now let's enter the Brisbane Broncos, and here's the situation for them. Their last three games are the Raiders, Storm, and the Bulldogs. Mate, not an easy run home, and as you know, they're not playing the best of football. Now, the team that's coming second last at the moment is the Dragons, okay? They're only 4 competition points behind Brisbane, and their final 3 games are the Bulldogs, Sea Eagles, and the Eels. And look, mate, call me a little bit crazy, Noz, but I reckon the Dragons are a semi-chance of maybe winning all 3 of those games, especially with their little purple patch of victory. So look, if what happens based on what I just said, I think that mate, we could be witnessing a piece of rugby league history in that the Broncos will end up grabbing the wooden spoon. So from premiers one year, wooden spooners the next, and mate, that's what you call a fall from grace. So I'm not sure what you think, Noz, but yeah, mate, the Broncos are definitely a chance of grabbing the spoon this season. Any thoughts?
Mate, I do have thoughts. In fact, I put it up on an Instagram post last Wednesday. So this is going to double as a bit of a call out to our social media as well. I went through that exact stat and mate, I called it. I reckon that the Brisbane Broncos are a definite threat to run last. And the current form of both the Dragons and the Broncos, mate, it's indicative of one team going one way, the other team going the other way. But wouldn't it be great? And another thing, mate, you could have written your own odds for that about 2 months ago. Like, it's just unfathomable in terms of how it's turned out. A great one, mate. So we are on to the outro now, Johnny. Onto Vox Popping. I have a few for today's Vox Popping. The first is yet another mea culpa. Mate, in last week's freeballing section on building a great team, I completely missed one of the most important aspects of a great team, and that's leadership. Mate, be it Proven at the St. George teams in the 50s and 60s, Ray Price at Parramatta, Meninga at the Raiders, Cam Smith at the Storm. Mate, all great teams have great leaders. That was actually pointed out by Vesey. He is now starting to challenge Croaky and Asher as our MVC, or our most valuable contributor. But Johnny, that actually leads to our least valuable contributor. I mentioned that my workmate Brendan, he's convinced that I'm a closet Bulldogs fan, mainly based on my Brooklyn hat, which has the white B and a blue coloration. He sent through another text message, which said that I am obviously a closet Bulldogs fan. It's really starting to make me second guess myself, Johnny, and I don't like that. What have you got for us, Johnny? Are you any Vox Popping this week?
Yeah, look, mine all come from that sort of funny post we did from Allianz Stadium when I was there for the Roosters Dogs game in that little beautiful private suite. Obviously, you posted it on Insta, and I had two little things come off the back of it. One was I saw my niece at a function on Saturday, and she said, Uncle John, I saw your Insta post from the game last week. I said, oh, okay. I said, what did you think? And she says she's calling me the Italian version of Matty Johns. So yeah, I've got to take that one. I'll run with that one. And then tonight at dinner, I was telling my youngest daughter, who's a massive footy fan, obviously a Roosters fan, and I mentioned to her that your daughter Noz said that we went a bit viral with that little post a few weeks ago. And then my daughter says to me, goes, Dad, just letting you know, I've got about 1,500 followers, and I reposted that to my whole social group. So look, mate, word is getting around. I think, we've probably got to do a bit more of that, because I think it can definitely help build our profile. So I enjoyed it. Let's do more of it.
Oh, let's do more of it, mate. Sounds great. Sounds great. Now, we have come to the end of the program, guys. So, as always, thank you very much to everybody for joining us. Now, remember, we do have our feedback email addresses, jc@nrloffside.com, noz@nrloffside.com. Don't forget about our social media handles. Is that what you call it, Johnny? Handles, as we've just been talking about. So, at Instagram, it's at @NRL_offside. At TikTok, it's at NRL_offside. Make sure, again, guys, that you get on. We'll be posting things during the week just for a little bit more engagement and a bit of fun between programs. But as always, we very much appreciate you guys joining us for this week's program, and we hope to see you this time next week.
Stay well, guys. Catch you next week.
Yes, it's me, grouchiest me, grumpiest me, wonderful me. There are some other pretty good grouches. I mean, there was that grouchy little guy, Rumpelstiltskin.